But joining us here on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line is a man who's been some compelling material on this LIV Tour v. PGA Tour kerfuffle that has broken out in the world of golf that has now taken even more steam out of the PGA Tour and into the LIV Tour with word that Brooks Koepka is about to join the LIV. Joining us from the Ringer is our friend Kevin Clark. Once again, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I support all buttons being unbuttoned, just to get on the record.
Okay. I appreciate that. Brockman, it's interesting, though, that you have your golf shirt all the way
I go
up.
Full.
You go full like you're in Rain Man. Yeah. You got the Rain Man look working
I'm
right
going
to
play after the show, so I'm just getting ready.
So we're right down the middle, if you will. Center cut. Center cut.
Watson, yeah.
So what did you make of the news that Brooks Koepka is about to tap out of the PGA Tour and join the LIV? What do you think?
Wasn't surprised because last week Brooks came out and said, you guys asking about this are putting a dark cloud over the U.S. Open. And I think there's been two types of reactions when every player has been asked about this in press conferences. Guys saying, I'm not leaving, I'm staying here, or they're saying, hey, we'll see what happens. And we tend to, at this point, know what that means. Colin Morikawa came out today. There were all sorts of rumors that he was going to be the next guy. He said, I'm staying. Victor Hovland, another example of a guy there were rumors about, he told the local Norwegian press last week that he's staying. So we kind of know where the battle lines are being drawn. For Brooks in particular, Rich, I'm not surprised in that he's another one of these guys. I'd put Bryson in this bucket. I'd certainly put Phil in this bucket, where we don't know what their earning capacity is going forward. Brooks has been injured for a long time. He was, I think, 55th last week in the U.S. Open. It's not like he's dominating right now. Obviously, Bryson's been hurt the last year or so. So I think that, kind of the morality angle aside, I certainly that is the angle. But when you talk about the fact that these guys can make 9 figures guaranteed in golf, they fit the profile of a person who's going to jump to LIV right now.
So where does it go from here in your estimation? Like I said, you've written quite a bit of copy on this subject matter, and no doubt thought a lot about it and reporting about it as well. What do you got on that front? What do you think?
The best case is it transitions to old school wrestling and becomes like NWO, WCW, and 4 times a year these guys get together. That's if the majors don't ban them, and it has to be all 4. Majors have to not ban them in order for this to actually get off the ground, and then it's the LIV guys versus the PGA guys. That will already hurt golf as a sport because people will get out of the rhythm of just watching it weekly. I mean, I love the players. I love the Memorial. I love Harbor Town. I love seeing the week-to-week kind of traditional tour stops, and it would be a real shame if the LIV guys were never able to participate in that, and I would find myself liking it less. I think the future is 2 AAA tours rolling around in the mud with each other and not on a week-to-week basis, not having a lot of buzz. It gets to be, I'm a huge boxing fan, Rich. Guess what happens when the best don't go against the best regularly? People tune out. They don't. People are saying, the intrigue of who's going to go to LIV is the best, most buzz golf had in years. Well, yeah, that only lasts a couple of weeks and a couple of months. It's going to wear off. And what happens next year if Brooks has a huge year and DJ has a huge year and we don't get to see them in the final pairing with the John Rahm or Roy McIlroy because of money and politics? That's boxing, and that's why I don't get to talk boxing a lot because nobody cares anymore.
That's pretty bleak, bro. I mean, there's no.
It's a pretty bleak situation.
Because I guess LIV is banking on that if Brooks Koepka and Bryson DeChambeau and Dustin Johnson and Phil Mickelson and so on and so forth, and they add more names, big names, huge names, and half the LIV field, they can send out a release that we've got 6 green jackets and these many claret jugs going today, and you need to tune in to see it because they find some iconic golf course to have them on, and they can gimmick it up like that. Maybe you'll find it. Is there any possibility that they do get a television partner? Like the Fox Business Channel or something like that. I mean, like, you laugh all you want, man.
No, I know.
Because you just described Kevin. You just described these two entities going at it. Like instead of a Ryder Cup, it's the world versus Saudi Arabia. Yeah. Like that's what you basically just described for a golf competition.
Right. So they had talks with Fox early on, months before and years before, any of the names were announced. I think at some point, they got Arlo White, who used to call the Premier League on NBC. So they're trying to legitimize the broadcast. I think we have to see where this goes. I think we have to see if the PR hit dies down. One of the things LIV is banking on, quite frankly, is the idea that by tournament 5, and I think it'll probably be heightened in Portland for the next event, but by tournament 5, 6, or 7, people stop asking questions about where the money is coming from. People stop, asking Lee Westwood in press conferences if he wins, whether or not, the question was asked last week, whether or not he'd play a golf tournament for Vladimir Putin. Those sort of questions, do they continue or do they die down? I think once that happens, that's when you might see more legitimate broadcasters say, okay, you know what? You have DJ and Brooks and Bryson. Yeah, we'll pay millions of dollars to broadcast that, or we'll do some sort of revenue sharing thing. But I don't know necessarily what the future of sort of the legitimizing of it is. And I also think that, how compelling is the product going to be? What happens, Rich? There's no cuts in this. What happens if the reason that Brooks and Bryson and Phil and DJ have joined is because they've played their best golf? Does anyone, Phil was 10 over in the first tournament. Does anybody really want to see these guys labor around? So it's a bet not only on the personalities, but that these guys are going to play really, really, really good golf. If Abraham Answer goes out there and destroys all these big names, I think that they have a bit of a problem.
Well, I don't think Kevin Clark of The Ringer here on the Rich Eisen Show, I don't think we'll ever forget where the money's coming from. I
agree.
Because, it's all about the money, why these guys are joining, right? It's not like Brooks Koepka really loves the idea of a shotgun start. Or Dustin Johnson really wanted to screw the PGA Tour. Honestly, it's because there's a bottomless pit of appearance fee money for a league and an entity that does not care about turning a profit. So it's all about the money, and it's about a bottomless pit of money that let's just put it this way: if the XFL or USFL had $2 billion to blow, right, then there might be an issue with them competing against the NFL. You know what I'm saying? That's a fact.
I totally agree.
Or any league.
I had a discussion last week with a friend, and I said, if your business model can be disrupted in a week like this, did you have a bad business model? Is that evidence you had a bad business model? And they said, well, let me push back on that. What sport couldn't be completely disrupted by this sort of thing, by the Saudi PIF investing? And you think about the NFL, Rich. You could, in theory, so the analogy, Dustin Johnson's making about 60% more than he's ever made in his career earnings, over the next 4 years. The analogy there, math-wise, is if Aaron Rodgers were signed to a 4-year, $436 million contract. That's the equivalent of what Dustin Johnson is getting relative to his career earnings, okay? But what I think is, okay, in theory, in 2 years when Aaron Rodgers is ready to wind things down, in theory you could get Aaron Rodgers. In theory, you could get Matt LaFleur. But what you can't get is Lambeau Field, Matt LaFleur, and Aaron Rodgers all working in concert together in the traditions that we know every Sunday. That's why you get 50 million people watching a playoff game, 40 million people watching a playoff game. And that, to me, I think that the cap of a new sort of league is always going to be sort of AAA, AA in some cases, because we just have things that we're used to seeing, and it's really hard to disrupt sports in that way and really take over. But to answer your question about whether or not we're going to forget, there was a guy, Jamie Weir, on the No Laying Up podcast last week talking about Newcastle United. This fund also owns the soccer team Newcastle United, and for 2 months everybody said, okay, they're going to sign these guys with Saudi money and whatever, and then it kind of defaulted to, this guy looks pretty good, the manager's doing a good job. I do think that there can be an element of fatigue, and that's why I don't think we're ever going to forget where the money comes from. But the more sports that's played, it's literally called sports washing, and the Saudis have admitted to wanting to do it. They say it on their own website, not that term, but what they're trying to do. And they think the more sports that's played, the less we talk about it, and typically that's how it's worked before, Rich.
Kevin Clark of The Ringer here on the Rich Eisen Show. Before I let you go, last year you gave us the nod during July. Hey, don't sleep on the Bengals. You gave us that little heads up because you went on, your annual training camp tour. Where are you planning on going this year? Where are you putting your markers down for your visits coming up in just a few weeks, Kevin?
So I'm gonna try to do like I always do, which is 20 teams. But here's one thing I've staked my claim in already.
Okay.
Jacksonville has the Hall of Fame game. Okay. I don't think Jacksonville is going to make the playoffs this year, but I think Trevor Lawrence was a legitimate NFL coach. That's my first stop in training camp. I haven't told the Jaguars that, but Jaguars, if you're listening, I'm coming. Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence, Trent Baalke overspent in free agency, but that doesn't mean they didn't get better players. That's a much improved team, and that's a quarterback that, if you watch the tape last year, still was much better than what the numbers say, and I think he's still on the superstar track. I'm staking my claim on Trevor Lawrence. He's my first stop for the training camp tour. He's going to have a big year relative to last year.
You know what? You're touching on something about the Jaguars with Doug Peterson is they essentially hired two coaches in one. They hired Super Bowl winning head coach Doug Peterson, and they hired not Urban Meyer. That's who they hired.
That's right. Maybe one of the biggest examples of addition by subtraction in the history of the modern NFL.
No question. By the way, and I know every single time I go on Urban Meyer, it's just like, well, you're a Michigan guy and you're bitter about him beating Michigan. It sucked. I hated losing to Urban Meyer, no question about that. But then I worked with him at the draft on NFL Network. He called in one time prior to a Michigan-Ohio State game. I mean, this is nothing personal. It's got to do with seeing somebody faceplant so spectacularly and also go ahead and denigrate the hard work of some longtime NFL people, and also bring that entire profession a slap in the face based on all of that, and then seeming no responsibility taken other than saying it was all on me. You know, like that doesn't cover the transgressions that we saw. But that said, now that I feel better of trying to quit myself of an argument that you're not making, but it's Peterson, and also the fact that he's not the other guy that I think is going to be significant in Jacksonville for sure.
I completely agree. It's not going to be a huge Joe Burrow type year, but it's going to be a big leap forward.
So who else are you going to go visit? Who else you're interested in seeing because of that?
I mean, I really want to go to Cincinnati again. Buffalo's become one of my favorite stops because that's such a compelling team. And also, the one thing I'll tell you about Buffalo in training camp, Rich, I don't know if you've been there, but man, do they show up on July 28th? It might as well be. It's like October in some cities. I had a meeting with Daboll last July, and I thought I could just mosey on up to the stadium on a scrimmage day, and I got stuck in one of the most brutal traffic jams in Orchard Park, New York, Rich, in July, and it was Bills training camp traffic. Well, there's no training camp traffic anywhere else in America.
I love it. You also mentioned Daboll, Kevin. Nobody's really talking about the New York Giants because of how putrid their last 5 years have been. Truly one of the worst stretches in the history of a very proud franchise. What do you think he's bringing to that equation and can actually turn around? What do you think? What do you think?
Can make quarterbacks better instantly. The thing I'm worried about a little bit, Rich, is that what if he makes Daniel Jones look so good that they think he's the guy and they kind of talk themselves into it. I don't think Daniel Jones is a long-term plan, but I think he's going to be much better than we think this year because of the Daboll bump, because some of those players, there's a little more legitimacy. GM I really like, met him briefly down at the owners' meetings in March. I think it's just going to be a step forward. I think there's almost no talent on that roster. Dave Gettleman was fine guy, but just a remarkably bad general manager, missed on some first-round picks. Some actual just washouts, guys who were out of the league within 18 months in some cases that were premium picks. So I think that there's a lot of work to be done there. But the thing is, a guy like Brian Daboll, who made one of the best coaching jobs in modern football with Josh Allen, and obviously Josh's work ethic and talent had a lot to do with that. That's something that I've talked to both of those guys about quite a bit. But it just raises the floor and brings some legitimacy. I don't think there's any scenario in which they're a tire fire this year, or kind of in the Bryce Young sweepstakes, because I just think Brian Daboll is going to win because he knows his way around an offense.
Well, look for my call during your training camp tour. Would love to get your thoughts in real time, what you're seeing. Thanks for the call, Kevin. Great stuff, as always, by you and The Ringer. Much appreciated.
All right. See
you. That's Kevin Clark of The Ringer, @by Kevin Clark on Twitter. I follow him. You should as well.